Now I'm going to stake this tree and show you how to do it. Trees don't need to be staked just as a matter of course. It actually turns out that it's better to not stake them if possible, because if a tree is not staked, it has to develop a stronger trunk because it's going to have to fend for itself in the wind. So an unstaked tree actually is going to be stronger. And any trees that are about 1.5 inches or bigger shouldn't need staking anyway. Sometimes you're going to need to stake trees if they were grown in a fabric pot. If they're bare root, you definitely have to stake it, or it's usually a really good idea to. Or if it's a small tree, you know, this big or smaller, maybe, not necessarily, but if it's going to be in a windy spot, it may be a good idea. Or if it was a freshly dug tree so that the root ball is not all that sturdy yet. So for the most part, I like to plant my tree first, and if it feels like it's pretty solid and you know, none of those things, if it wasn't fresh dug, if it wasn't bare root, then I'll try my best to not stake it. But if you do have to stake it, there are a few methods of going about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use one of them, but I'll quickly kind of tell you all 3 of them. The one I used to use is probably the most common one in North America, and that is where you take a couple of usually metal stakes, maybe wood. This metal stake has a nice, it's a lot easier to get into the ground than a wood stake. And what I'll do is I would put one on either side of the tree, just outside of the root ball. You don't want to go through the root ball because then it just moves with the root ball, so it defeats the purpose. So you want to go outside the tree, hammer it down into the soil using a sledgehammer, or if you have access to one of these, a post pounder. I don't know if you can see that right now, but that's much easier to get it down in there. And then what you do is you get these 2 in, one here, one over on the other side, or sometimes you can do 3 if it's, you know, if you need to. And then you're going to tie something to the tree. You don't want to use wire or anything that's going to cut into the tree eventually. You want to use like I use pantyhose or a used t-shirt or a rubber strap, something with a wide strap that can stretch. Some people use garden hose. That works okay, but you don't. Some people also put a wire through the garden hose, and you don't want to do that because the wire can just cut through the hose. So what you want to do is take the tree and kind of bend it, and you'll see there's a point where it kind of bends. That's where you want to stake it. So it's usually just below where the crown starts somewhere. So I would stake it right there, or strap it right there, you know, just 2 things coming in like that. So that's the way I used to do it, and it works pretty well, but it's not the best way. There are 2 slightly better ways. The next one would be to take those stakes, except maybe use just 4-footers, put them right down into the ground, and then with some kind of rubber strapping that goes right from the ground all the way up to the crown area, that's a little bit better of a way to stake. It's a little bit more sturdy. And I think maybe that's more common in Europe, I'm not sure. I haven't seen a lot of it, but if you do that, so again, just 2 stakes on either side, maybe 4-foot long stakes all the way down to the ground, and then rubber strapping, something that can stretch, that comes up into the crown and attaches there. So that's that one. But I'm just going to show you the one that I use now that is the superior method, and I never see anyone using it. I'm not sure why. And I'll point the camera down because I've already installed it here. So there it is. It's getting later in the day again, so I have some shadows. But this turns out to be a superior method. What I've done is I've driven some 4-foot stakes just outside the root ball, so kind of right along the edge of the root ball. I don't want to go through the root ball, but right along the edge into the ground. In this case, I didn't think it was going to be this difficult in my clay soil, but it was really hard to get them down in there, so I stopped here. I would have put them a little bit further down into the ground. But then I started thinking, you know, if I leave them up a little bit, it's going to offer some protection from the tree, from any lawnmowers or anything that might come by and hit the tree. So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll leave them up and it saves me a little bit of hard work. Also, I wasn't trying to put them into the ground at an angle. It was really difficult with these 2x2s to do that. So what it is I have, I've cut 4 2x2s into slightly less than 4 feet long because I used the other little bit for these 2 cross pieces. And then what I do is these cross pieces go right on top of the root ball, right on the root ball, and I screwed them in to these 2x2s. And this turns out to be just a better way to stake the tree. And the cool thing about it is, with the other 2 methods, you have to come along in a hot climate where the root system develops more quickly. You come along maybe in 6 months, whereas in a cold climate like mine, you come along in maybe 12 months because it takes the roots a little bit longer to establish. And you have to remove those stakes. And you really want to do that as soon as possible because as soon as that root system has developed, because you want the tree to, the trunk to develop without stakes, to grow sturdier in the wind. With this method, as long as it's a moist enough environment, as long as you're irrigating, this will just eventually break it down and you actually don't have to remove it. You certainly can, but you don't have to. It'll just break down. If you use screws like drywall screws or something that disintegrates in the soil, you don't have to worry about it. And so that's kind of nice. It's not a big deal to remove the stakes, but this is a cheaper way to go. You just pick up a couple of 2x2s and do it like this. So I really like this method. It works better and it's pretty cool. I never see anyone doing it. It kind of looks nicer too than the stakes. Not that that matters much, but yeah, I think that's all there is for staking. I've just put my mulch back around here, not over the root ball. And I really hope you've enjoyed the staking lesson because it took me a while to pound these things in there. That's the other thing, is the metal poles do go in a little bit easier. So if you have a really difficult soil, it might be better to use one of the other methods just because it can be pretty tricky to get these posts down in there. If you have a really big tree, you could use 2x4s too, at least for on top of the root ball for a little more strength. So that's all for staking.